Arise, minions, and welcome to unMadeGaming. We are here. I don't know why I have these on. We're here, and we're back for our monthly, despite the fact we've taken several of those off, our monthly Q&A Ask a Lich show. Welcome, everybody out there on Twitch, on YouTube. We are multi-streaming to both tonight, as we have been doing with our normal streams. We got a couple of changes coming. I think our VODs of the Ask a Lich live show will no longer be on our separate YouTube channel. They'll all be coming back to our main channel. A slight name change on the main channel, and then that's just going to be where everything is. Is going to be located on that channel. Welcome back. Our last Ask a Lich was in November. We took December off for all the holidays and all that fun stuff. We took January off because I was gone for some military training, but we are back. We're here, ready to rock and roll in February and going forward. Fingers crossed, everything should be good to go here. We got a handful of questions here. Like I've done before, I'm going to try to keep the time frame tight to about an hour. So in about 9 p.m. Eastern here, we're going to rock this thing off. So let's jump on in. As always, if you guys have questions, you can ask them ahead of time. If you're a patron, you can pop them right into our Discord server link in the link in the description down below. You can pop that over there, and you can do that anytime during the month. If we are live, you can ask questions in there. Just please preface them with the word question. And also during the month, you can pop them on the comments or any other videos that we have, or on our socials, etc. And we'll get those questions and we'll put them in a little document we have here. Pro tip: to hear something, you need to have the wireless headphones on. Yes, but I don't need to hear anything because no one is talking to me in this stream, so I don't need headphones. And there's no music playing, so there's no audio cues for me in this stream. Oh, that was a pro tip for you. Got it. Lectu, Lightning, Void, Melissa, I saw you out there. How's everyone doing tonight? Thanks for showing up. Thanks for hanging out. Let's jump into some cues here. We have a cue. We have a question from our patron, Lectu. Have you ever had a game, setting, or campaign? A game, setting, or campaign. Okay, cool. Any of the three that you really wanted to play /GM, but couldn't find enough interested people. Yes. Yeah, I have so many of them. But not because of, usually it's not because of interested people. There are so many games and settings that I want to play that I just don't have the mental bandwidth for. I'll get a new book in that's very cool and I want to play it, and I start reading it, and then another one comes in and I start reading that one, and then I get that squirrel brain. In fact, literally, let me see if I can make a mess right here on my desk. Literally on my desk right now, let me just dump all this paperwork off of it. We don't need that. Shh, paperwork, shush. You don't need that. This is a cool game right here called Shattered City. I probably read through like a third of this. I even have a bookmark in there. I read through like a third of this, and I was like, this would be really cool. This would be really cool for a Patreon game. Really cool for a Patreon game. And here's X, Y, and Z reasons why it would be cool. That's been sitting there for probably a year. So it would be cool to run, but then I had 17 other projects happening at the same time. And then there are other games where, like, I really want to play the game, but I really want to play the game as a player. And it's not difficult for me to find someone to be like, hey, would you GM a game for me? It is far more difficult to say, hey, would you GM this specific game and or this specific campaign for me, because I want to play in it. Because then that requires them to go out and learn a game, possibly. And it's a lot more to be a player in things. I do get to play quite a bit. I get to GM quite a bit. And I get to play in quite a bit of worlds. But there are some that I would love to be a player in. One that comes to mind is Ouroboros, Coils of the Serpent by Chris Metzen. It is from War Chief Gaming. It is their 5e supplement campaign world. I'd love to play in that. I'd love to be a player in that game. But alas, I will most likely be a GM when I play that game. Yeah, so I think that answers that question. You've never played Coriolis? Have you only ever GM'd it? Is that why? Is that what you're referring to? You have that book. That book, as in Ouroboros Calls of the Serpent. It's great. It's great. That's true. You have played it in one shots, G. You've also GM'd one shots. Question. Speaking of G, question from G. What are some favorite plot tropes you like using in your games as a player or as a GM? A favorite, more of a character trope. A favorite character trope of mine is the brothers. I do like a good, like a Sam and Dean or an Elwood and Elric. If you're in a Full Metal Alchemist, one is sort of like a fun younger brother, more innocent, and the other one's like a hard nosed, gruff kind of older brother. You can see that in our Void game. With plot tropes that I like to use as a GM, I am a big fan of subversion. Is like thinking you're doing one thing, but really you're doing another thing. A prime example of that is a book I'm reading my son right now. They are fighting a monster, and a bigger guy saves them, but gets injured, and they are endeared to this injured person, and they're like, "Oh my god, we want to help you." So he gives them a book that is full of like monster lore, and he wants them to go fill out the rest of it. So they begin filling out the rest of this book with like monster essence and lore, and then they find out that there's an evil thing that this guy is secretly working for, and that the book and all of the monster essence in there is actually the key to bringing this evil guy into the world. So stuff like that subversion, that thinking you're doing other things. I also, I don't know if this is a plot trope, but I also try to add some level of like, I don't know if I want to call it politics, but like I don't really have a better word for it. It's like the inner machinations of the world of like different factions. If that's politics, and that's what it is. We currently have that going on in my Shattered Obelisk campaign at home. Is that like the adventuring party left several people alive that were like tangentially working together, but every time they left someone alive, they went and told their boss, and they were like, that's bad. And then another one told their boss, and eventually their boss told their boss. And that guy told one of the other like underbosses and was like, "Hey, what's going on here? We're getting a lot of reports from these like adventurers, and now they have like a coalition to stop the adventurers." And so by letting people live, it has gotten exponentially more difficult for the players to defeat one of the factions, which is pretty cool. Let's see. What is your favorite monster or creature to add to your campaigns? And do you have a twist you add to make it different? This is from our patron, Snowdogs. What is your favorite monster or creature to add to your campaigns? And do you have a twist to make it different? A favorite, I think the undead show up in every undead relevant game. Like if there's a logical reason to have undead in a game, they show up. There's always undead in all of my D&D campaigns. There is undead in there's undead in Coriolis. There's undead in most fantasy settings. I think have an undead aspect to them. Even in Gods of the Fall, we just fought undead. The Chryserians are technically undead. I don't know why. I just think they're a great every monster, right? So like, you can do a lot with bandits, and you can do a lot with goblins and all these other things, like even at low level. But like undead can be just as good at low level and at high level, right? Because you have like undead, then you have wights, and you have liches, and you have mummies, and the undead, like skeletons. The undead banner, like the undead blanket, covers so many things, and then you can pull from other crazy media for undead. there was, I don't remember if this is an actual published thing or I made it up. I think it was actually published. But there was an undead creature in 4th edition that was like an ogre, and one of its abilities would, it would just like reach inside of its, like, it had like a torn open stomach. It would just reach inside and pull out some guts and throw them as a ranged attack, and it would explode and deal like poison or whatever the equivalent damage was. So you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with undead. In a very fun way, like the undead, I think I had a campaign where someone chopped the arm off of a undead, and the arm became its own, basically a summon. It just took off and started did 1 damage, but it was still inconvenient. If you chop the arm off a regular person or a goblin, it just is now on the ground. So I think there's a lot of fun things you can do with the undead. Plus there's that aspect of horror. Plus you can tweak it to be like an aspect of like silly. Then you can add in some like arcane undead or some weird eldritch horror undead. There's a lot you can do, and I think that's probably my favorite, and I put them in everything just because there's so many things you can do with them. Make an aura of stench. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff that I love. In my offline D&D game, or my non-streamed technically D&D game, Crystal Legacy, we had one of the bosses they fought was an undead. It was a mummy called the Lord of the Accursed, which was very cool. Yeah, I love them. Big fan. Question from chat here. G, do you have any tips for organizing political elements / machinations in your campaign? Yeah, so it starts, yeah, absolutely. So it starts small, right? It's like, if there are factions in your campaign world, you need to write them out like a character, right? The faction itself has motivations, right? The faction has goals. Even if you look in the real world, every group of people has a goal, or else they wouldn't have a group, right? They're a like-minded group of people that are trying to get X, Y, and Z done. And then you can look at other factions that are like in the field of play and say, okay, do their factions, do their ideals or goals align in any kind of way, or are they diametrically opposed, right? Because if they're opposed, these two factions will never work together, and they'll probably fight, right? So in that kind of situation, you can turn one faction on the other faction. You can kind of have an ally here and have an enemy here. The first time I think I saw this done that really clicked in my brain was in the game World of Warcraft. There were factions that you could gain reputation with by doing things with them, but there were I think there was a group of it was the early 2000s, so there was this big thing about ninjas versus pirates was all over the internet. But there was a group of rogues and a group of pirates, and if you started gaining faction with one of them, you would lose faction with the other one. And I always loved that concept of you can't have everything, you can't be friends with everybody. So that's one thing. So I would make your factions like characters, give them a motivation, give them ideals, build them up. Why do they exist to begin with? What are they? What is not met by some other larger force like the government or the city or whatever that would forge the need for this, and then give them a goal, and then put things in the way of that. And then put those things directly at the hands of the players. Because if the players are not able to interact with the political elements / Machiavellianisms of your campaign, then they don't care, right? No one cares if kids are being kidnapped from the city by a cult. No one cares that there are two factions that are running for political house there, unless one of the factions is kidnapping the kids, right? That could be happening in the background. That could make the world seem bigger, but the players are never going to engage with that. So if you want the players to engage with that, and then I kind of keep not exactly a mind map, but a list of this is what the faction wants. This is why they're working with this person. This is what would stop them working with this person. Goals of how they could be double crossed. Are they trying to double cross them? Things like that could come into play, because the more you have information like that, the more you can base off of what the players do, how you can react to that. That makes sense? Hope that makes sense. I feel like undead monsters are criminally underutilized by most DMs I play with. Yeah, they're great. I love them. Huge fan. I would put Jinn everywhere or Angels. Yeah, Jinn and Angels are cool. I think they're a little bit higher level for stuff. A little bit higher level. I think undead run the gamut. They can be anything. They can be. You can fight them at first level. You can fight them at 20th level. Let's see here. Have you ever? This is from Lectu again, our patron. Have you ever had something planned for a character's arc, only for the player to say no way? Planned, not in the sense of railroading, but hey, would you be okay with your character doing this or that route? Something planned that they said no to. Yeah, I mean, it happens. I don't want to say it happens all the time, but it definitely happens. Unfortunately, I don't have any big story or advice about this. That's kind of the collaborative nature, and that's kind of how I play. Is usually those things that would require player buy-in on that level happen behind the scenes. We recently had an episode of The Rise, spoilers if you haven't seen it, where G's character Antares was in a fight with two other people, and at the end of that fight, we find out that they're not real. Those people were imagined. They were in her head. And that wasn't something that happened live. That was something that had been determined months ago based on a number of conversations between me and G saying, hey, what about this? What about that? What about, and then I was like, oh, Brain Blast. What if this character is actually not real? What if he's in your mind? And then we sort of tweaked that a little bit. And so we agreed on this point. And then how that manifests in the world is kind of on me to put in there. Sometimes I do involve the players in how that happens, or I say, if you want to control this narrative, just tell me when you want that scene, and then you guys can have that scene. But big sweeping things like that are typically something I reach out to the player and say, hey, I had this idea based on your backstory, the story we've told so far. I think it would be cool if this happened. How do you feel? Does that go against your thought for that character? Especially when it comes to characters, I have my players actually make NPCs, and so it's not like they just make the NPC and hand it over to me and it's now mine. They have no control over it. I want the NPC that I'm representing to be true to the NPC they created. So if my idea is cool in my head but atrocious in their head, then it's not going to happen. So yeah, but like I said, I typically do those kind of things off the table. We talk about that in the DMs to make that happen. Yeah. Let's see here. I suck at political stuff, so I tend to avoid it. I'll be honest, I'm not great at political stuff. I'm not great at political stuff. I want to be better at it. I would love to run some crazy Machiavellian, Game of Thronesian level politics. But that's the thing, is unless your players are playing like lords, the chance of them getting into the crazy political hierarchy is far less. So there's only so much that the players will engage with politically, unless that's your game, right? From what I understand, Vampire the Masquerade is very like inner vampire political. Like, it's very much between the houses, and like crossing this house could be bad for any number of reasons, or whatever they're called, coteries or whatever. Either way, from what I understand, that is very political in the world of vampires. So unless the game you're playing is very political, I think if I recall correctly, the game Shattered City that I held up a minute ago, that game has a lot of like political logistics going on in it. Which is, I think, what was going to be cool for the patron stream would be to like have the patrons control the houses and by like vote or some shit like that. I don't really remember exactly how I was planning to do that. Just sort of popped into my head. Idea Machines, how's it going? I saw, dude. Clans of Vampires. That's that's the one. Let's see here. Matt D says, do you have any superstitions regarding dice? Say if they consistently roll low, do you just get another set? I don't know. Um, here's what I'll say. I don't really have superstitions like that, like rolling low, get rid of those dice. I don't have like dice jails. I will joke when like my players are rolling low. I'll be like, "Oh, you need to get new dice." We do have a joke when we're like rolling on stream. Somebody in the TTRPG community, their name is Danny. They're actually the social media PR person for Roll20, but we've all known them for like years. So we'll say, go pray to Danny to make your rolls better on Roll20. I don't have anything like that. What I do have, which is I think the closest thing you'll get to superstition, is I still have my very first set of dice. And I actually bought a duplicate set of those dice. And those dice I only ever use for GMing. So you'll never see a character being rolled with those dice. They are only for GMing. And whether this is true or not, they feel pretty legal. Legal? They feel pretty lethal. I typically roll over 10 and probably at least half the time I roll over 15. They are some pretty hot dice. But there are also times where I can't hit a single character. So it could all be in my head. But yeah, I have a set. My very first set of dice are very cool. They look like an oil slick kind of in the sun, and they have gold lettering. And they are just a very cool set of dice that I only ever use when I DM. If that's a superstition, then maybe. Other than that, I have fun. Like I played one of my last characters in person was a Dragonborn knight, and I had like silver, or I had white dice for the Dragonborn part, and I had silver dice for the knight part. So I had silver and white dice just to have fun. But I have 30 sets of dice, so I just kind of grab and mix and match. Let's see here. I've got a game that tackles colonialism and exploitative economic presence with some sprinkles of cultural denial. That sounds incredibly complicated. That also sounds like something that is like a very delicate topic, right? I don't... how do I say that? Because D&D is inherently colonialism. I don't try to do a lot of games like that, only because I don't know enough to not fuck it up. It's basically what it is. Yeah, that does sound like a very complicated game. It sounds very interesting. Let me see here. New dice equals supporting your local gamer store, so get new dice. Yeah, I think I mostly get my dice either in packs, like the box sets that like game companies send me, or I get them from conventions. But we don't have a local game store near me. Legal dice, yes. In Mindjammer, you can play cultural attacks with memes, with turns taking years. That's interesting. I've never played Mindjammer. In fact, I don't think I know what Mindjammer is. Yeah, you definitely have a table that's really on board. Definitely some safety tools there. Let's see here. Who, Fate Core Space Opera. Oh, okay, cool. Who are your top 3 favorite GMs, and what's one thing you've learned from them? Shit. This question was from G, by the way. Who are your top 3 favorite GMs, and what's one thing you've learned from them? Well, right off the top of my head, Greg, Grimjack21502, is one of my top favorite GMs. And I think the one thing I can say for Greg is never be afraid to go all in. Playing with Greg encouraged me to do more voices, encouraged me to get into like cosplaying my character on stream. It encouraged me to do like like a narrative introduction. We just like talk about the intro. Like, yeah, never be afraid to go all in. Be as theatrical as you want to be. And there is some, when you're streaming, there is some trepidation of like, ooh, do I get theatrical? How do I, how far do I go? What's too much? And for Greg, there is no such thing as too much. There's no such thing as too much. Let's see. The other person would be Brennan Lee Mulligan. Is one of my favorite GMs of all time. He is my Matt Mercer, is what I say for a lot of people. And it's the thing I've learned from him. The thing I take away when I watch him is his ability to not only say yes and, right? It's not always about yes and that's what we hear a lot of times with improv. There's a lot of yes and, there's also a lot of yes but, and there's also a lot of no but. Like it's okay to say no in improv. No, you can't do that, but you see this other opportunity and maybe you can do it this way, right? Maybe what you're trying doesn't work or isn't safe or whatever, but at the same time, you have this idea. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. So you can still accomplish what you were trying to do. I think the other thing I get from him is there are a lot of times if you watch him play, someone will say, okay, I want to do this crazy thing. And then he'll respond with something like, okay, it sounds like what you're trying to do is this. And he re-explains their cockamamie scheme in the form of mechanics, like as the end goal of mechanics, and then he kind of walks back how they can do that mechanically, which I think is very cool. As far as a third GM, top three is a tough one. I wasn't ready for top three. Top three. You know what? I would have to say, I feel like this is a cop-out answer. I have to say Dot. Just on the top of my head. I would say Dot. And the thing I learned from Dot is passion, right? Is Dot won't say yes to something if she's not passionate about it. And then she gives it 100%. We have documents of lore for Void. We have documents of lore for Alien. She actually went through and did a recap of every episode for the last season to get us ready for the next season. Same thing. I have she's an entire notebook. I have pages of stuff from her for Shattered Crown. Her and I just have random Lord of the Rings conversations because she's a huge Lord of the Rings nerd as well. But it's the passion. When she's passionate about a topic, she digs deep. Absolutely devouring lore. Just gobbling it up. Same thing for like Fallout. I know she wrote Winter of Adam. She wrote on either the whole thing or part of Winter of Adam. But she's huge Fallout nerd, Alien nerd, Lord of the Rings nerd, space nerd, like, and then she just goes in on it. So that level of passion, that is one of the reasons why when it comes to like Shattered Crown, I am digging as the other, like everyone else loves Lord of the Rings. But like Dot and I have books of just like timelines and history, and other, like, I have a book with just the battles. So we have a bunch of like encyclopedic knowledge, and because she's that passionate about it, that means I have to do my work as a GM, which then makes for a more rich world in that instance. Let me see here. Question: Do you often watch action plays? I assume you mean actual plays. Like, do I watch other streamers stream tabletop games? Is that the question? I'm gonna assume that's the question. Do you often watch actual plays from other streamers / channels? No. I would love to. but I don't have the time to dedicate several hours to one show by myself. In the daytime, I am either cleaning the house, working on things, or managing my toddler, and it's very difficult to pay attention to an RPG with a toddler. And then by the end of the day, my girlfriend's done working, our kid's in bed, and we would like to watch like The Walking Dead or some other show, right? So no, I used to back in the day when I had the time for it. I do have a bunch of things queued to like watch. I have watched some of Dimension 20. I watched the entire first season of the high school one that I can't think of, Adventure Academy. I think that's what it's called. And I watched the whole first season of that one. I watched the whole Magical School one. I watched a couple of those. It takes forever for me to watch them. And then somebody's show has to really grab my attention to like make me stick to watching it. I have plenty of them that are like in my queue. Basically anything by Miss Magitech. Tracy's amazing, and her stories are amazing. So much of the stuff that Bub does on his channel is like queued up on my YouTube playlists to watch someday when I have a year of time. Amazing storyteller. I'm sure there are others that I just can't think of right now. I do, however, now that I think about it, while I don't often watch actual plays, what I do is I listen to actual play podcasts. Rollmageddon podcast is one that I'm a big fan of. I listen to their whole Tales from the Loop one. I'm listening to their Alien one now, and then I'm probably going to jump to their Coriolis one. I want to say it's called Party Business, and they are a One Ring podcast. There's a couple of other Tales from the Loop ones. I have a couple of D&D ones. Anne Richmond did a D&D podcast that was great. Big fan of that one. I've definitely listened to a lot of tabletop podcasts. It's far easier for me, like on the drive when I pop a headphone in and I'm cleaning the house, kind of thing. I can listen to those. All right, let's see. Going all in from Greg is something I've been trying to do myself. Thanks for putting a label to it. That passion shines through. Actual play is yes. Cool. All right. Let's jump over to our next question. This is a good question. I assume any anonymous question is just from G. Can you tell us about your offline campaign, Crystal Legacy? Who are the characters and what do you like about each one? Oh, Christ. Okay. I didn't fully read. So Crystal Legacy is a beta test of a campaign world. So Crystal Legacy is a campaign that I am currently like in the early stages of creating a setting for. And by creating a setting, I mean just on paper so that I can play in it. So Crystal Legacy is a fantasy setting heavily based on Final Fantasy as a whole. Not one specific game. I'm taking touchstones from a lot of games and sort of smashing them into one. So we are playing, about 100 years after an apocalyptic event happens, and the players are tasked with finding a large chunk of magical crystal. They find out that it was stolen by a group of outlaws or like, I guess outlaws, but they're not like big crime outlaws. They are stealing it to fence, to have money, to safely ferry refugees out of places to places safer, because somewhere to the west of where they are, there's a warlord who is just killing people and destroying villages and all that kind of fun stuff, right? So they start looking for more information about this warlord. They end up finding this small town that they're kind of like casually helping to build up, and through that they end up finding a buried temple, and they wend their way down the buried temple, fighting through monsters and bosses and all kinds of other things. Very video game style. Like every floor had a boss, and when the boss died, he disappeared into like a glimmer and an item dropped. Like very Final Fantasy, right? And then when they get to the end of the thing, they fought this giant mummy that I had mentioned previously, who has a opening monologue. He dies. He's got a death monologue. And then they get past him and they enter the crystal chamber, which is one of the big Final Fantasy things. And they see one of the the 4 core crystals of the world. And the crystal speaks into their mind and tells them that, like, oh, they need to bring light back to all the other 3 crystals to save the world from the encroaching darkness, blah, 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 right? So that's the campaign that we're playing in there. We're I want to say 20 something episodes into that one, and they've gotten one of the crystals, and they're crossing the Dune Sea. They're crossing the desert right now to the west, trying to find the second temple, the second shrine, crystal shrine. Who are the characters? All right, let me see if I can remember this. We have a Harengon Hexblade Paladin. She is like the mom of the group. She is a retired adventurer who was actually previously dead, and we don't know why she came back to life. And then she's funny, very bossy. But very bossy in like a disappointed parent kind of way. Like, I wouldn't do it that way. In fact, you know what? Let me teach you 9 other ways to do it better than how you're doing it. And then maybe you can do it that way. Like very passive aggressive, which is fun. And then her nephew, the character of her nephew, is a Harengon gunslinger. Very stoic, very Roland. From Dark Tower, which is very fun. And they get into like bickering matches every once in a while, which is very funny. And then we have a blue dragonborn samurai who has a very interesting backstory, which we're finally getting into right now, which I can't reveal in case one of the players is here. But he's got a really fun backstory where he was part of a clutch of like arcane altered dragon eggs, and there may be some weird legend lore about him, and maybe he's got siblings, and maybe that's relevant somehow. Who knows? And then we have a human half-elf. I want to say half-elf. A half-elf bard who was also dead and is a little bit nutty. She hears voices. She sees things which may or may not be real. She talks to herself and other people that no one can see. And she has crazy, vivid dreams and other things about histories that she has never experienced and doesn't really understand what's going on. But to everyone else, she just seems like a kind of kooky person who talks to themselves. So half the time they just go, okay, all right, anyway. And they try to like realign her back towards the mission at hand. But then every once in a while, she'll see something or do something or interact with something in a real way that everyone's like, wait a minute. You were telling the truth the whole time? And everything she does is like whimsical and often funny. Yeah. And then we have a gnome rogue who is very, very fun. The player this is their first time playing D&D, and they're constantly saying, I'm not sure what to do, but then also doing the craziest, unique thing that throws us all off of our game, or just improvising some just batshit wild stuff that we're just like, okay, and then we kind of have to run with it. Very fun character, constantly flirting with like most people, but especially with the Dragonborn. And then the last character we have is a halfling thief, or a halfling rogue, who I want to say was part of like a troop, like an acrobatics troop, and they're just a drunk. So they roleplay a drunk all the time. They're constantly looking for and jonesing for booze. It was funny when we played in the temple, which was a pyramid, there was an effect from the boss that any food became ash or spoiled immediately, and any alcohol became vinegar. So she was jonesing for some booze during that whole match, which was very funny. Yeah, very, very fun cast of characters. Very fun cavalcade of cartooners there. Kamalik, hey dude, how's it going? How are you? Let's see here. So they're a Virgo then. Yeah. The Virgo is Melissa. I'll call her out. It's a similar but different Alec. A far more passive-aggressive, parental Alec. It's very fun. Very fun. Question from Lek2. Any RPG or scenario you were interested in trying but fell short of your expectations? Shit. Yeah. There's a game, I don't even know what it's called. We ran a campaign of it on the channel. I want to say it was called like Spellwind or something like that. If you find it, it's on the YouTube. The background is kind of like a desert with like a skeleton man in there. Johnny ran it. The system was terrible. It was bad. It sounded very cool, and then the art was very cool, and then the system was just not good. For any number of reasons. It was complicated. The whole system was based on like an if this then that sort of statement. It's like, okay, you can do this if you do this, or if this is if you have one great move per day and then 3 lesser moves per day, and if this guy is within 10 feet of you, you can. It was just so fucking complicated. It was so complicated, and it just became not fun. Like, we finished the campaign and we were like, "Ooh, that was rough. That was a rough time." Any RPG that I was interested in. I was gonna say Space Finder, whatever, Starfinder. But I was never interested in playing that. But that was a terrible experience. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Any RPG that I am interested in playing that has fallen short of my expectations. I don't know if this falls into that category. It's never fallen short of my expectations, but I think either I inadequately set expectations or the game falls short of other people's expectations. Mutant Year Zero, and subsequently, so Mutant Year Zero, I assume Twilight 2000, because I haven't actually played it. Everything I've seen about The Walking Dead has the same thing, and probably other games that I can't think of right now. They have a core mechanic of logistics. And these logistics run through other Free League games as well. Like even Alien has like, what's your oxygen and your food at? But games like Mutant Year Zero, The Walking Dead, and Twilight 2000, all of those games are like very West Marchy. And like, if you don't have food, there are mechanics that you start to die, or don't have water, or don't have whatever resource. So they are inherently very resource management heavy. And a lot of people will see those games and go, the concept of this game sounds very cool. I would love to play in The Walking Dead. And then when I tell you that you have to manage all of your resources, and oh yeah, also there's a whole chapter on building things in your haven. So like in like, like the farm in The Walking Dead, you can build watchtowers, and like that takes X number of weeks, and we have to track that. People go, oh, I'm losing interest as we speak. I love those things. I hate resource management when it does nothing. For the most part, like, I don't track rations or ammo in D&D. That's not fun to me. However, when it's like, in an apocalypse and you're starving and you haven't had food in a week, we need to track those resources because you could just die of elements. I love those kind of games, but they are not for everyone. And once you break it down to that granular level and you go, this is the game we're playing. It's zombie apocalypse logistic style. Everyone goes, I don't know. I don't know about that. All right, we have time. Let me just check chat here. Welcome in. Yep. Kamamic. Hello. Thanks for joining us, etc. Okay, cool. No questions. All right, this is an old question, so we'll knock this out because next month it'll become even more just out of there. This is also presumably from our anonymous G. How was your PAXU experience? A memorable moment. And what was something you would change for next time? PAX was great. PAX was overwhelming, is what I'll say. PAX was overwhelming in a myriad of ways. First of all, we had people from all over the world show up. Iquin was there. From Sweden. Snow was there from Australia. G was there from Canada. And then we had other people scattered around the United States that all came out there, which is overwhelming. One, I don't have a big enough head to believe that everyone came out here for me, but at the same time, everyone did come out for the community, which is still in itself overwhelming. And then we all hung out, and it was great because we have only ever known each other on the internet, and we all got together, and immediately it was like we've known each other in person for years, and that is just a very unique feeling. That's not everyone has that, where you know someone online and you meet them, you're like, hey, bro, and you're just friends. So that was amazing. Seeing a lot of people that I haven't seen in a hot minute. I saw people that I had no idea were going to be there. I had a lot of great conversations with people. Overall, I had a blast. The community members got me very drunk, and then I talked very close to Melissa about the state of Blizzard, her history there, and other such things, to include Ouroboros Coils of the Serpent. That was a great time. And then I woke up at 7 a.m. the next morning ready to rock and roll. A memorable moment. I mean, the obvious ones are the ones I just said, seeing everybody. But I think for me, this is going to be a little sappy. A memorable moment for me was I was there with my partner. And she has come with me to several of the PAX Unplugs. But she has always had this this trepidation with the community that it's inherently my thing, and it's something that I've built, and she doesn't want to intrude on it, but she also doesn't really know how to engage in a way that doesn't just feel like she pops in and then disappears for a week, despite me telling her to just, that's fine, do that. But by meeting everyone or meeting so many people in person and seeing people and talking to people, that interaction made her far more comfortable with the community as a whole, and she is now more active and wants to do things and maybe wants to stream on one of our games and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very, very cool that allowed her, that gave her the final hurdle to get in, which is something she's wanted to do, but just hasn't felt like she's been able to do, which is very cool. I'm very glad that happened. And what is something you change for next time? Sunday gravy. If you were there, you got a one-time, probably exclusive Sunday gravy where I cooked sausage and meatballs and pasta for 10, 15 people, how many ever there were. That resulted in us walking to a grocery store there and back in the rain, cooking half of it in one apartment, then taking it all in bags in an Uber to another apartment to cook the rest of it. It was a logistical nightmare, and I would never, never do that again. It would take a lot for me to do that again. So that is something that will... it is absolutely something. It is absolutely my own fault for suggesting it, and that was probably a one-time situation. And I'm glad we did it. We had a blast. Everyone loved it, and it was very much a final meal at PAX, and it was a very family thing, and I loved it. However, the actual process of making it happen was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. All right. Last question of the night. Void Soldier in chat says, question, have you ever had... That's what he said. Let's try that again. Void Soldier in chat says, have you ever had a problem player, and how would you deal with it? For example, one of my friends that I have tried to play with several times has a habit of having his character do things specifically to piss off other players. Cool. So, Void, I am not going to single you out here. I am going to give you a quick, fast, and dirty answer. And that answer is talk to the player. Some form of this question has been asked several times in other Ask Lich videos. So the quick, fast, and dirty is talk to that player. If they are intentionally pissing people off, talk to them, set them aside, be like, hey, look, I've noticed this. Why are you doing this? Do you think it's fun or funny? Are you trying to say this is what my character would do? Because it's actually disruptive. It's disruptive, and it's ruining, or it's devaluing the time that people are having here. And if you continue to do that, then I'm going to have to uninvite you from the table. Just a conversation. Find out why they're doing that. Are they bored? If they're bored, how do we engage them, right? Do they not understand how to play? Do they think they're being funny and they're really not? Just talk to them. Talk to them, have a conversation. Do it separate. Hell, do it in the DMs. Text them, something like that. Something that where they're not, like, they don't feel like they're attacked or on the defensive. But yeah, especially if it's bothering other players. Hell, even if it's just bothering you. But yeah, talk to the person is the simplest answer. And that is our last question. I know you just joined in here, Lion of Khmer. Am I winning, son? Stay winning, I guess? I don't know. Yes, I am. Constantly, at all times. I win every day. Every day that I am upright is a win for me. So cool. That is the end of our Ask a Lich stream. This will be available on our YouTube later on, and I will be sure to get all of the timestamps in there in a reasonable manner. And as I said before at the beginning of the show, if you have not heard that, I'm probably going to be taking all of the videos from our other YouTube channel down, put them on our primary YouTube channel, and I'm probably going to get rid of that YouTube channel so we only have the one to focus on. As always, if you guys like what we do on the channel and you want to support the community, the best way to do that is on our Patreon. Link for that down below. And if you are a patron, you can go over to our Discord and type your questions in the special chat just for this throughout the month. And I will answer them next month when we have this next stream, which will be in about 4 weeks. We do it on Monday, like the third Monday of the month, so go check that out. And if you're not a patron, anytime we post these videos, you can go in the comments and leave questions. You can go on our Twitters and our Instagrams and all that fun stuff and leave questions there, our TikToks, all that good stuff. But that's it. I will see you guys next time for more of these fun shenanigans. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for the fun chat. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.